Welcome to Stories from the Center of the Universe, the podcast about the human experience.
Don Willis, welcome to the Center of the Universe.
Well, Paul, thank you a million for inviting me. This is awesome to see you.
We haven't seen each other since 2002, probably.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, probably fall of 2002. Yeah.
And Don, you are one of my fondest set of memories about being in the Guard. You were professional. You had a great sense of humor. You took care of the troops. You were a soldier, but you also had a personality that fit really well inside that culture. And so you're one of those people in my life, Don. I need to say this at the beginning. Whenever I saw you or when I knew I was going to see you, it made me happy.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, man. So I usually start with where'd you grow up, where you're from, that kind of thing. But I think I'm going to start with what are you doing these days?
Well, I'm entering my 13th year. I started emergency management in 2010. So I'm well into 13 years, almost 14 years doing emergency management. I worked with the state team with Virginia Department of Emergency Management for 7.5 of those years. Everything up north. That's where it seems like ever since I retired, I've been in positions that I worked at Fort Belvoir for a while, U.S. Department of State for a while. Then I went to work for a nonprofit, and then culminating with a phone call I got one day from a good friend of both of ours, is Virgil Gray, and he says, "Hey man, when you coming to work for me?" And I'm like, "Hey, I got a job. I don't want to go back on the Beltway and stuff like that." But he said, "Well, I'm doing this thing, emergency management. I'm trying to build a team, and we had a lot of Virgilisms because he talked a lot of crazy stuff. But he said, you know what? If you can chew bubble gum and walk at the same time, you could probably do this job." And he says, "I'm looking for a deputy coordinator." And I said, "Well, I don't know if I got the skill set for that or not." He said, "No, I need you as an operations sergeant." He said, "That's where I know you from and where you did well. You can build a team." And that's what I'm doing. He said, "We're building the first team in the Commonwealth of Virginia under Virginia Department of Emergency Management, Region 7, Northern Virginia. We got 10 jurisdictions, and I want you to interview. I've got a set of resumes here. They're getting ready to I want to go to second interview, and I just want to see where you fall with this group of 10. I want to pull 5 out, and let's see how we compare." And we were spot on. We didn't exchange notes. I didn't know anything about it. He hired me as a training and exercise manager for the 10 jurisdictions in the National Capital Region. A lot of work with our FEMA partners and government partners, but did that for about 7.5 years. And when Virgil left and abruptly, he left and went to work for Stafford County Emergency Management as the emergency manager, because he was a chief regional coordinator in Nova, and I was like the second under him as far as his exercise and training lead. And then I basically told my new boss, I said, "My days are numbered with you on this team, but I'm going to be looking for employment elsewhere as well." And Fairfax, that's when the young lady's interview that I was going to go to on a certain morning of certain day after Veterans Day, she was medically moving out and her position had become vacant. So I applied. There were a whole bunch of positions, and I ended up getting the job in Fairfax and worked there until from 2017 to 2022. Left there on November 4th, Friday, November 4th of 2022, and started in Spotsylvania as the emergency management coordinator. I went from a team of 26 to 1. So we had a emergency management staff in Fairfax of 26 folks. It's pretty robust. And now I'm a one-man show working under fire and rescue and emergency management for Spotsylvania County. But it's at the division chief level. So I can I've already told them I'm looking. I want the brand. I want to make my own team eventually. But again, that all comes with funding. But been doing that now since, for about going on 7 months, and it's been a blur. It's been busy, but it's good to be home. I mean, right now, like this time of day, after beating the street in Nova for a week and coming home, the only thing you want to do is go to bed. I mean, my days were a lot of times there was about 4.5 hours of windshield time just getting to and from work. It sucked.
Yeah, that's awful, Don. I think I would have told you at some point in the last 13 years, move to a different part of the world.
Yeah.
Because that traffic, it's got to be top 5 worst in the country.
Yeah, I had that come from a couple of in senior leadership too. It says, you choose where you live. And I said, I understand that. And I said, but I'm not moving to Northern Virginia. I said, I made a commitment when I got laid off in 2006 from the State Department. I made a commitment that I was not going to venture past the Chapawamsa Creek, and that's one of the main things with Virgil. And I told him, I said, listen, Virgil, I'm not putting up with this commuting mess. He says, well, he said, some days you'll work in Stafford, some days you'll be in Manassas Park, other days you might be in Loudon. He said, but I go to a lot of that stuff too. He says, we're just bubbles and trucks right now, but eventually there's going to be vehicles for everybody. And I never got to that point, but with that team. But when I went to work for Fairfax, it was just beat the street day in, day out. And one week about every 7 weeks, I was duty officer, so I had a response mission too, in case something happened with the emergency management team. I had to respond to it for the entire county of Fairfax, and that was there were some trying times there too, because we had a lot of responsibility with not a lot of authority. A lot of how should I say that? Whole bunch of responsibility, but not a lot of authority to do anything.
Yeah, which I imagine feels like you're helpless in a lot of ways. But you've never played the victim, Don. You've always struck me as a guy that just figures out how to get it done, and you get it done.
Oh yeah. There's one way or the other. It just, if it means being up for a call at 3 a.m, you just suck it up. You get up, you make the call, and you. That's what I tell people now. I'm getting ready to teach Recruit Academy. Our new fire recruits that are coming up. I'm going in and giving them blocks of instruction on, EM 101. They want to talk to me about my experience as an emergency manager, but then they, that bleeds over into your previous careers. Because a lot of times the young ones want to hear a little bit of a story before they, make a educated guess or anything like that. But it's refreshing. It's refreshing to look back and say, maybe it was impactful to some. Pretty interesting times. I've run into people over the years that we served with, and you hear comments like, now I understand why we had to do it, and then it wasn't quite right, but then we had to do it again and do it again and do it again and do it again. And said that all paid off when we got into places like Iraq and Afghanistan, and all that repetitive rehearsal stuff paid off when you got into a theater of operations. Remember Walter Baskerville?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Was talking to him the other day at Roger's birthday party, and Roger Brooks' 75th birthday party. And I was talking to Baskerville, and he was telling me about his encounter with an IED, a vehicle-borne IED, and I'm like, yeah, it's real stuff. I was working on that team right after I retired. I went to work for PEO Soldier, and they put me on sensors and lasers, working. I thought I was busy as a uniformed soldier. When I got with that team, because of the war effort, I mean, it was nonstop, just 6 months of whatever we could pull off the shelf, design it, test it, and then get it into country. Get it into Afghanistan, get it into Iraq, wherever it had to go. Commercial off the shelf. Hey, the second iteration will become, something that's hopefully in an M mode at that point versus an X mode. But I learned a lot quickly with that team. I was one of the first ones to field the strikers with the lightweight laser designated rangefinders. We were the team. There was 3 of us that had the training on that, and pushed all those 500K a piece lasers into country. It's crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I remember right after 9/11, we decided to go to Afghanistan, and Rumsfeld, who was Secretary of Defense at the time, said, you go to war with the military you got, not the one you wish you had.
Yeah.
So I imagine the days, weeks, and months after 9/11, it was crazy for a lot of people.
Yes, it was.
Hey, emergency management, I've never done it. I imagine it's a mix of planning, training, actual real world application. It sounds like Fairfax was a pretty hectic job for you. Can you walk me through a typical day or week, what it was like to be an emergency management responder and coordination?
Yeah, you nailed it on the head. It's heavy planning. There's always opportunities for multi-discipline, multi-agency coordination. With an emergency manager, you bring your each and every discipline, not just your responders. You have to bring them all into the fold of what emergency operations really means. And our bread and butter is the emergency operations center. So those responders that are out there doing the stuff, putting the wet stuff on the fires and putting the rounds down range, and securing, our law enforcement officials. It's my job. It's the emergency management team's job to resource them. So if they need additional resources, you coordinate that. You find a way. I know enough now to where, especially, oh my God, after doing COVID, and that's a whole nother nightmare. But you learn real quickly what your role is. You go to training, you get to schools, you go to planning section chief, situation unit leader. My biggest accomplishment, I guess I could put, was the 2.5 years that we spent with COVID response. I was in Fairfax. So we had 3 teams because we had a large enough DEM staff, Department of Emergency Management and Security. I ran red team as a logistics section chief. And, when you're talking ordering millions of a said product, or you're talking about outfitting, hundreds of thousands of first responders with enough throughput and enough equipment and PPE to keep them safe, for the next year or next 6 months, and then doing it all over again after the shelf life expires, stuff like that. So heavy coordination of resources. And that's working with not only state agencies, but federal agencies alike. And then the COVID response was one of the first times I have ever seen there was really no end to it, because we actually started the after action review process in phases because we were so far into this. When you're working for a board of supervisors or a county executive or county administrator, and they throw a date up on the calendar and say, hey, we want a briefing as to what were the impacts, what were the pluses, what were the minuses, AAR stuff, and how are we going to fix things that we weren't able to fix along the way. But you've got staff that work with you. I'm lucky now that I have a fire and rescue department, fire and rescue and emergency management. That's where I fall under with SPOTSy, because I have a lot of folks that are well trained. They've done these emergency operations center tasks for a long time, and they understand incident command and they understand EOC command and that interface. Incident command, you're out there on the ground, you're doing tactical stuff. EOC command or EOC operations, you're basically keeping that fight going, sustaining them with the necessary resources. And that's SPOTSy now. Back here, it's heavy rep, which is radiological emergency planning, because of North Anna. It's a huge task for a locality. But I'm taking the training. I'm going through the Centers for Disaster Preparedness and FEMA, and I'm getting all the course certifications. Going off to places like in a couple of weeks, I'm heading down to Surrey to basically shadow their group through there and do some controller help with FEMA as they're graded on their exercise. And then next year, in turn, those folks will come up and assist me because I'll be in that rotation for a graded exercise. But it's just like the military as far as the teams. You got your special teams that do certain things. You got your monitoring teams, and you remember the NBC stuff we used to do, the Siberni stuff, with the specialized teams. I'm asked all the time about, well, you did this in the Army. I said, well, I did do some of that, but before I get on this and say that I'm going to be a hazmat chief or something like that, I'm going to have some additional training because a lot has changed. So,
well, a lot's changed, and we were doing first level stuff mostly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We weren't doing the hardcore, like above theater level understanding of anything. Yeah. So, Don, I've always assumed that you grew up in what I would call the greater Fredericksburg area. Did you grow up in Spotsy?
Yep, sure did. Yeah. Been in Spotsy since 1974. Came here from Falmouth. My family was originally from Woodbridge, Prince William. Moved to Stafford I remember my sister was born in 1969, and we had been in Stafford maybe a year. And then I went to 1st through 4th grade at Falmouth Elementary School. And then when we moved down to Spotsylvania, we moved to a little farmette, little 5-acre, little back then, but huge back then, but little now, 5-acre tract. And we did the farming thing for the next bunch of years until I got sick of farming and said, hey, I think I'm going to join the Army and get the hell out of Spotsylvania County. And then, but always kept Spotsy as my home. I moved to Ashland one time down in Hanover, near your area there. When I first went to work in Dove Street in Richmond, I moved to Ashland for 6 months and then moved right back to Fredericksburg and then built a house in 88. Yeah, well, that was 88 because that's the same year I went to Sapper School. Built a house in 88 and sold that in 2003. Yeah, for double what I paid for it. That's the only reason I sold it. And then we've been here. I'm out in the wilderness area now, out off of Plank Road and Route 3 and Orange Plank Road and Brock. I'm a straight shot right to the courthouse from here, 10 miles to where I work now. Yeah. But we've been here going on 21 years. And we love it out here. It's still country. Yeah, we don't have a subdivision or anything like that. Sometimes I wish we had a little bit of oversight, but I'm on about a 1.08 acre, which is plenty. I mean, a lot of grass to mow.
That's definitely a lot of grass to mow. What is it about Spotsy, or is it more, what is it about being, well, I'll just ask the question. What's it about Spotsy that you basically, once you got there as a 4th or 5th grader, you stayed?
I don't know. Even when I went off to, overseas on my first tour, I always had that feeling like I would come back to Virginia, come back to Spotsylvania County. There was just always that drawing. I mean, I didn't have a whole bunch of friends, but I said it a few times when I worked up north. I said, when I get back to Spotsylvania County, I get there in the evening after a long day of work, I'm home. And that means a lot. You can go to a house, or you can go to where you stay, but when you step foot in the door, you're home. And that means a lot. That to this day, that means a lot for my wife and I. We try to really, really use our time wisely, and we've had a heck of a load over the last bunch of years. But again, we wouldn't trade it for anything. With raising these grandsons, it's just like we had to do a part 2. We're parents, we raise our kids, they go through, we get college, trade school, get through high school, and then grandkids come along, and then the things that you took for granted, and I hate to say that, and I tell a lot of young people that now, I love the fact that you have a plan, but don't take one day for granted, because that plan can change in a blink of an eye. And with a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, we've had to take a second look and back up a little bit and start over. I mean, we fell on some hard times, but we've had some good times too. So, but you're home. We're home. I mean, it says a lot.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about your childhood a little bit. What did you like to do as a kid?
Fish.
When you're so you're a hunting and fishing kind of guy?
Yeah. Still to this day, I love to fish. I just don't do enough of it. Hunting, I kind of got out of when I was in high school, junior high school, and senior high school. I was a trapper. Learned a lot of basic skills from some older gentlemen with trapping, but outdoor stuff, hunting, fishing, baseball, not a lot of sports, not football or anything like that. I played some baseball, and then always had my mind set on, doing something with the military, because nobody else in the family ever did anything except my uncle. So, later in life, growing up as a kid, from like 14 on, I just really, really started thinking seriously about something different, something to get me out of Spotsy, because I was a young man and up at the crack of dawn, holding down a job while I was in school, paying my way through school, had my own car, paid cash for it. But I was at work at 4 or 5 in the morning, catch the bus sometimes from work to school, and then catch it home from school back to work, and get off and ride my moped home, whatever it took. This day and age, they talk about stuff like that, you get run over out on the roads. But the stuff we did, and I'm sure you've said it 100 times too, I don't know how we survived. I don't know how we survived our childhoods with some of the stuff we did.
Well, I mean, look, I think we're better off for it the way we grew up, and shame on me and a lot of other people, my generation, where they're just like overly protective, and you're not doing one of the most critical things you should be doing as a parent, which is letting them become independent citizens. And it's really hard to be independent when mom and dad are hovering over you all the time.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like you went to school because you had to, you worked because you had to, and you're like, I want to go do something that maybe is a little bit more out there, can expose me to some different things. And oh, by the way, I get to serve my country and maybe get in better shape and that kind of thing. But it sounds like you were a country boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I say that with all due respect.
And we did it all. I mean, I remember you and I talking about, farming and stuff like that, because you've got a vast experience in that. But because I know we used to always talk about Hanover tomatoes. But no, you learn so much. You learn how to. My dad and mom's goal when we moved from suburban Fredericksburg, Falmouth area, was to move to a place and completely subsist off of that property. I mean, when some days we'd come home and my dad had been to the stock market, we'd have pigs, goats, chickens, geese, you name it. Next thing you know, he would come home, he's got a small cow, and then we just raise these animals. And, then towards the winter, guess what? We're going to start stocking up the freezers. Now you got to know how to slaughter the animals. You got to know how to do this stuff, and how to, certain cuts of meat, things like that. And we didn't think twice about it. I actually had in my junior and senior year, I was big in FFA, and was a chapter farmer, had a scholarship from Upjohn Corporation. Bobby Orrock was he was my shop teacher. Yeah. And he begged me. He begged me, please, Don, don't go in the service. You got a full ride at Tech with agribusiness. Just you've got it. You've got this scholarship.
You had a full ride to Virginia Tech?
And I said, I'm going in the Army.
I'm going to enlist in the Army.
I enlisted in the Army. And he was pretty bitter with me over that. I said, I'm just making a decision based on what I need to do. And I said, I'm going to go and I'm going to make it. And then I'm going to come back here to prove to you that I made the right decision. And I did. I came back after boot camp and AIT, and I came back before I deployed overseas. And I went down to the high school, full dress green uniform, walked right up in Bobby Orrock's class. I said, I'm here, and I told you I would be. I think I might have had one ribbon. But I was on top of the world.
So hold on a second, Don. You had a full ride to Virginia Tech, which I haven't looked at the stats, but I imagine in the country it's a top 2 or 3 sort of agribusiness school. In the world, it's probably top 10, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
In fact, my uncle went there for agribusiness. He was a cattle farmer.
Yeah.
And he had a decently successful business life, but you gravitate to what you gravitate to. And it sounds like even though you had grown up that way, you were looking for something different.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah, that's self-sustaining lifestyle is super, super foreign to, I think, most of humanity. Mm-hmm. Well, let me back up. I say most of humanity, certainly this country, taking care of yourself in terms of food alone, that's most people would, I say most people, I think 85% of people would die within 3 months.
Oh yeah.
If they had to do it on their own.
I tell the generations, our kid generations, our grandkid generations, I tell them all the time, I got a grandson now, my middle grandson, he's in his room right now, but he is 5'10", just turned 16, 5'10". He got his physical yesterday, 193 pounds. And they're getting ready to start there. They get a break and then they're going to start their 2-a-days. But football never misses a practice. He's this is second year lettering in lacrosse. So he does lacrosse he calls it in the off season of football. And then he does his football. He's been playing varsity football since he was a freshman. And he's focused. And I look back at him and he comes in sometimes and says, I'm so hungry. I said, grandson, let me tell you something. His nickname's Chunk. He's had it since birth. He was a big baby, 8 pounds, 14 ounces. But he likes it. It stuck with him. Even his coaches, sometimes they ask our permission, say, is it okay to call him that? I said, absolutely. He likes it. If he didn't, he'd tell you,
Right.
But he comes in sometimes, he talks about going back to this hunger thing, about self-sustaining and knowing what is true hunger. I said, have you ever really been hungry? I said, I'm going to tell you, you haven't.
Yeah.
And he's looking at me like, yeah, I have, man. I was like, what over with that? I said, no, you have never experienced true hunger. I said, if you had to go through something and be deprived of food for 5-6 days, and all you had was water, you would really have a fond understanding of what being hungry really is, and how to sustain on basically what you have on your back and those survival aspects of it. Those are life lessons that you just never forget.
Yeah, not eating for a few days and not knowing where your next meal's coming from. Yeah. And it's got to be especially crippling for people that are in those situations that don't know how to figure it out for themselves or didn't grow up that way.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. So a little bit of baseball. Were you good at baseball?
Yeah, pretty good. Ended up, I played a couple years in Parks and Rec stuff. And then when my brother moved up to a higher level league, JCs, things like that, pretty much high school ball, I would bat boy for him. My dad was always coaching the team. So yeah, we had some good times.
All right. You mentioned you don't get to fish enough, but you'd love to fish more. What is it about fishing in particular that's draws your attention and wants you to do it more?
It's just the relaxation of it. When I get out on a pond or anything, like, you don't have to catch fish. You just got to wet a line, sit there, get sunburned, whatever, get rained on. If you catch a fish, that's great. most of the time when I take my grandsons, I got a 5-year-old grandson now too that's chomping at the bit to get out there and get his line in the water. My oldest grandson Dominic, he's been fishing since literally fishing since he could walk. I got pictures of that kid and a diaper bag over my daggone shoulder and tackle box here. We're going fishing and we're out the door at 6. We see the sun come up on Nye River Reservoir, and by the time this is like an infant, and I'm humping this infant around. I bring him home with 1 crock. He left with 2. He comes home with 1 crock, no diapers left, and we're reeking, but we've been fishing. My wife looked at me and she said, "Have you lost your mind?" I said, "This boy caught a catfish a while ago, and since that day, since the first time I took that kid fishing, every time he goes near a body of water, you can bet you can't get your bait on the hook quick enough. He's already caught a fish.
Wow.
There were no bass in that pond. Well, he caught the first one. Just a avid fisherman. But it's the relaxation of it. I mean, what they say: a bad day of fishing is always better than a good day at work.
Yeah, Don. The older I get, the more I realize. I mean, fishing, the act of fishing itself is relaxing, but there's something about being on or near water that makes the experience. It's more than just relaxing. I'm still struggling to put my finger on it, but if you tell me I have an option of doing 10 activities on or near water, or doing it on land without sight of water, I'm doing it on or near water every single time.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. We were going back and forth to Topsail down at Camp Lejeune area there for quite some time. 2015, 16, 17. We actually went a couple times in 2018, and then things changed a little bit, and then we got into COVID, and that kind of ruined our vacationing for a while. But now the price is just out of this world. But my wife would even tell me, over the years, and I'm sure you've probably experienced a little bit of this too, but over the years after military service, you get the arthritis, the pain. That's a whole nother chapter. That's probably a whole nother podcast. But the closer you get to water, I mean, we would be driving to the beach, and the closer we got to the water, and then we get out and start walking on the beach, you feel better.
Yeah.
I mean, just the mere fact of, yes, the water, the relaxation there, but there's something about the pressures, the salt, whatever it may be, that just makes your body feel better.
Yeah, Don, I'll tell you, I'm in my mid-50s now. If I have a choice and I have to travel a decent distance, I don't care. I'll travel every time to be near water.
Yeah.
All right. So, Don, you decide you wanted to enlist in the Army. You didn't want to go to Virginia Tech, which most of the people in my family, if they heard that about you upon meeting you, they'd be very disappointed, because I swear like 90% of the people that went to college in my family went to Virginia Tech.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. Did you have any idea what you were getting into?
Yeah. I went in to school early, and God, it was November of 1981. And I had made my mind up that the first recruiter that I ran into, I didn't care what branch of service it was. And I was almost positive it was going to be this Marine recruiter. And I got there that morning super early, and the first one I ran into was a E7 in the Army. And we immediately started talking. And I said, "Hey, I'm going in the Army." And he said, "Hey, we'll get you set up this, that, and the other, ASVAB, do this, that, and the other." Next thing I know, I'm fast tracking, man. I'm joining delayed entry in November of 1981, and I don't graduate until freaking June the next year. So I already had my P-bed, and I already started my P-bed. So, yeah. Then I talked to the Marine recruiter after. I said, "I thought you joined the Marines." I said, "No, well, you didn't show up on time." I'm ready to go. And I did.
Hey, Don, hold on a second. If the Coast Guard guy had showed up first, you would have been in the Coast Guard.
I'd have probably been a coastie. Yeah.
I mean, they're different. I mean, obviously, you and I have not served in all branches, but some similarities between the Marine Corps and the Army.
Yeah.
There's some special folks in the other branches that there's some
Yeah.
overlap on the special side, but the other branches are very different from the Army. But the 18-year-old version of you or 17-year-old version of you didn't matter. You wanted to serve.
Yes, sir. And, you know, when I got overseas, I can actually say I probably went to the premier infantry division on the planet. You know, when I got to the 25th Division, I had no clue. But it wasn't long after being there that I said, this is legit stuff. I mean, they trained constantly. And to this day, I mean, 65th BEB, you know, sends XXX to Sapper School or XXX to Ranger School through their programs that they had. You know, there's not a big washout rate with those light fighters coming from 25th Division. And I did. I really made I made rank fast. I made E5 really fast, and then got an opportunity to go to BNOC before most people were even thinking about PLDC.
Wow.
Back in the day. And because you had to have the scores, you had to have the aptitude, you know, on your SQTs and all that other stuff to qualify for that, you know, then the boards as well. And my squad leader, he didn't have a high school education, and he couldn't do the math. He couldn't do the demo calcs. And they're talking about him, you know, these squad leader positions, E6 positions, and I was an E4. E4, I hadn't even been promoted yet. I was an acting Jack E5 for 6 months. And then when I graduated PLDC and graduated Commandant's List from PLDC, and then less than a year later, I got a slot in BNOC. And their washout rate was horrendous because there were no computers. Everything, you know, even with, you're an engineer officer, I mean, you know it well. You could have the right calculation, you could have the right poundage, you could have the right down to the eighth iota, but if your math wasn't right, you got a no-go. I mean, it was that you had to have perfect stuff. I mean, I'll never forget doing the minefield card, you know, minefield reports and stuff, the 1355s. I'll never forget that form because you couldn't have any erasures on it, you know. Oh my God. But challenging. And then to be sent from there, and I tried to get station of choice back at Carson.
Hold on, Don, hold on. Let's go back to basic training. Any fun memories from
basic? Basic was survival. AIT as well. They lied to us. I was in Delta 1-2. I was a demon. And they said, man, you get through basic training, you know, we got this long weekend pass, and you get to go down to Rolla, Missouri, you know, a little college town down there. And you know, here we are, 17-year-olds. Go down there. We went absolutely crazy, you know, went nuts, and came back, got back late. And then AIT started the following morning, and we were thinking, oh, you know, AIT, this is just our skills training, you know, it's not gonna be that bad. Smoked us from day one.
Really?
I can actually say I've never been to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri that I didn't get my butt smoked. Never been to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri that didn't get. It was like, and then go back a few years later, go to Sapper School and get smoked again. Yeah, got home from there, and I said, man, I hope I never have to repeat basic and AIT. That's for sure.
So, at what point did you know you were going to be a 12B?
Oh, that day I signed up in '81.
So, how did you even know what a 12B was, or what a combat engineer was?
Had a Vietnam vet friend of ours who was with the fire department. I still connect with him, by the way. He's a retired volunteer, and he was a combat engineer in Vietnam, and was telling me about his duties, you know, bridging and stuff like that, and working with maps and topographic maps, things like that. More of an 81 series, I think it was back in our day, topographic engineer. But I was looking more at the construction piece of it, bridge building and things. Well, that's more of 12 Charlie, 12 Charlie bridge crew member, 12 Bravo, your combat engineer. So you're going to do these other things with fortifications and mines and explosives, and I really didn't know that much about it naturally, but oh my gosh, the training that we received was just phenomenal. And then continued to receive over all those other years.
All right, so I love the connection to the Vietnam veteran. How many demo ranges have you been on in your entire time, regular Army and in the National Guard? Have you had a misfire?
Once.
And were you senior enough where you had to deal with it?
Yep.
Tell me that story, because
you're never gonna believe, and it was an electric charge.
Oh,
which, oh my God, that tells you right. We were in Makua Valley in the island of Oahu, and we had set up M180 cratering kits. They were brand new. We see this thing, it's got the shape charge on it, it's got the cratering charge on it, it's on a tripod. Damn, how hard can it be? So we got the TMs out, set this thing up, daisy chain like 4 of them together to do this relief face road crater. And we get back, we wound our stuff out like this, we got this guy with a cap, this guy with a machine, and we bring a private over like that, say, hey, fire in a hole, fire in a hole, fire in a hole, let her rip. It's going to be a big boom, because we were quite a ways back. Fire in a hole, fire in a hole, fire in a hole. He cranks off on that freaking blasting machine, and I mean cranking it hard, and I'm just sitting there going, oh my God, no. What did we not do? Lieutenant looks at me. I'm like, sir, did you check the shunts? Did you check the switches? Did we do the final? We did everything. Okay, well, guess what? We're going to have to wait a while. I think minimum then was electric misfire was 30 minutes to an hour.
Yep.
So we waited, and then good God, we're like crawling back up there to here's these kits just sitting there, and shunted the wires off and everything like that, made sure nobody had even close access to a blasting machine. Went up I go right up to the toggle switches that are on the tripod, and sure enough, all the toggle switches were off. So flip the toggle switches back up, shut the little gates on them, went back down range, fire in a hole, and the first time he hit that thing, boom! I mean, it went off. But I was shaking my boots.
How many tripods were there? How many?
4. Yeah,
I mean that's a lot of pounds of demolitions.
Yeah, it was a hell of a hole.
I mean, I've only been around the M180 maybe a couple of times, and one time I remember we were behind really thick bunkers, pretty close to the M180s. Frankly, I felt like I was too close, but we could see through this really thick, I guess it was plexiglass.
Yeah.
And I saw dirt go up, I don't know, 60, 70 feet in the air that was the size of 2 cars put together.
Yeah, huge clumps. Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yep.
Yeah, so I was going to say those toggle switches, when you were dealing with those, your pucker factor had to be 11.
Finishing nail. No way. You couldn't have drove a finishing nail.
Oh, man. I won't bore you with my story. Kind of similar. It's hilarious. It sounds like you went to your first unit, 25th, was in Hawaii, on Oahu. Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty sweet deal. Your first duty station is Hawaii. Now, I've been to, and Don, I don't know if you can still hear me. It looks like.
Yeah, I got you.
All right. I've been to Schofield, did a 2-week thing there, and I think the Army found the worst part of the Hawaiian island chain.
To build. Yes, indeed. Koli Pass whipped my tail on more than one occasion. I mean, you had to qualify to go to air assault school, and one of the qualification factors there was the freaking ruck march and the run to Koli Pass and back. You have people just freaking collapsing, falling over into ravines and stuff. It's just, it's crazy. And the terrain, Makua Valley, that was also a very, very spiritual place. Um, I had a platoon sergeant almost die in Makua Valley. He promised himself that he would never lay on the ground again, and he was in a Australian hammock, and was we were getting some shut eye because you didn't come back. You go out on range week, you're on the range, bivouac right there, and I'm looking at this contraption he's got over there, and here we are all in our little huts and poncho villages and racked out there on the demo range, and we hear this blood-curdling scream in the middle of the night, and it's my platoon sergeant, Riley Tiger. I'll never forget him. Got bit in the throat by a freaking massive centipede.
Oh, God.
And here we are in the middle of the night. We got comms, but we either going to get him. That's where I had my first experience with combat medic, and actually happened to do a freaking emergency trach in the field, because this guy, we were either going to get a Skillcraft pin down in his freaking trach, or he was going to die. I mean,
Wow.
he swelled so fast. Then we had to clear an LZ. Here it is. It's pitch black. So we lit the place up best we could with our 5 tons, and we put in this hasty LZ and called for what was it? 8-line, 11-line medevac request. Got the request across the mountain, and then to Tripler, and they flew out there and got him, saved his life. But he wasn't the same after that. I tell you, those centipedes were freaking brutal. Scorpions, centipedes, but no snakes, which was everybody loved that.
So help me understand how big these centipedes are.
Yeah, the average size of them 9 inches, and just nasty brown. Get in your rucksack, come home with you. Oh my God. Yeah, they were treacherous.
That sounds worse than a garden variety snake.
Oh yeah. They were out to get you. There's no doubt there. But good Lord, demo ranges over the years. My God, I went to 2 in Korea. There were 2 on Oahu that we used. And then when we would deploy, we would go to the Big Island on deployments. We would deploy to the Big Island for 30 and 45 days at a time.
Mm.
And then, if you've ever been to the lava fields of PTA, Puakaloa training area, you can't dig because it's lava. So the only thing you can do is, these foxhole techniques with, precision explosives and stuff like that to try to learn how to put in fighting positions in lava, because they wouldn't allow us to dig, but they would allow us to build up, and they'd let us do these precision shots, to when they came out testing all these different kits and stuff like that.
Don, you're the only person I know that has tried to create fighting positions on a lava field.
While wild boars are coming in, trying to get in your tent at night.
I mean, it's like a different planet, right?
It really is, yeah. And you go, that's the only place I've ever been in my life that you experience 4 seasons in a day. Yeah. You can literally go from Black Sands Beach in Kona to the top of the observatory and experience all 4 seasons in a day's time.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
And at certain times of year, it rains almost nonstop there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they get the like monsoon season. Yeah.
Almost like being in Asia.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. And so you mentioned Korea. Was that your next stop?
Korea. I actually deployed to Korea while I was assigned. Went over there. We were over there for the better part of almost 3 months, and that was for Team Spirit exercise 84. Yeah, I got pictures of the Olympic Stadium they were building in Seoul.
Yeah, because was it 84 or 88 that it was in Seoul?
It was 84. I was there. But they'd already started construction for the 88 Olympics.
Yeah, that's right. Because 84 was LA, I think.
Yeah.
Cool. And 3 months, that's a long time to go anywhere, especially
with engineers. We were always advanced attachment and always rear detachment, because we had so much equipment.
Yeah, and your unit in the 25th was an engineer battalion?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how much training did you do with the infantrymen?
We did combined arms training at least once a quarter. If
Okay.
you were, if you were in, we had those. You were either in the Ready Brigade or you were in the reserve or prepping. Uh, so naturally, I was in Alpha Company, so we were with the First Brigade, and we would train with our infantry count. Not anything near as much as we did once we got to the 29th. I'll tell you why, because the 25th, they were just transitioning to light infantry in 85, early 85, and then I PCS'd in 80. Yeah, PCS'd in November 85 back to the States. So I was very lucky to get to go through light infantry indoctrination, rites of passage, and then understanding those command support relationships with our infantry brethren. Because a lot of us, we still didn't understand what this whole light infantry thing was going to look like. We still had 5 tons, 5-ton dump trucks and gamma goats and what's that CEV? We still had a CEV with us, an M88 tank retriever, because we were still considered a heavy unit.
Yeah.
And then once they started transitioning to light, I was like, man, there ain't no vehicles or nothing. This is just out here rucking, and you had your rucking there. That was it.
You got a pair of boots to take you places.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So how long were you regular Army?
4 years.
4 years. And you said, I think before we started recording, you had roughly just shy of 90 days.
Yeah, 89 days. And then I went back into boots with my first full-time AGR Title 32 position in August of 86. So I got out in May, June, July, August, and didn't even have a break in service.
And you went to your local Army National Guard Army.
Right there in Fredericksburg. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you know it was there before you went active duty?
No.
How did you know it was there when you came back?
Just from hearing folks talk about it. I didn't really pay that much attention to it either. Even when I was at Devens, I PCS'd to Fort Devens, but I came home. My wife and I came home, bought our first new car, came home for the holidays, and then went right back. And then out of the blue, I'm told as I'm in processing to my new unit, Bravo 39th, that we're deploying. And I'm like, what unit on Fort Devens deploys other than the 39th when they went to Vietnam, and the 20th Special Forces Group, when they're a reserve unit. Bravo Company 39th is deploying. I'm like, to where? We're going to Honduras. Honduras? Yeah. Next thing I know, better part of 2 months, almost 2 months and a week, we're in Honduras. Totally unbeknownst to us why we're there, but my platoon sergeant ends up having a pretty bad flashback. He actually had to go to basic training twice. He had such a long break in service, but he was a NOM vet, pretty experienced NOM vet. And when we got in the country in Honduras, the terrain, everything, it just reminded him so much. The Quonset huts, the GP lodges we had to stay in. We're going down there on basically a humanitarian mission and a mission to pretty much increase their infrastructure because they had nothing. Palmarola Air Base was just that. It was a field landing strip. And at that time, we didn't know anything about Iran-Contra. We didn't know what was going on with that. We figured it out quick, once we were there for a little while, because we're like, hey, we're supposed to be heading back to Devens. And then next thing you know, our orders got extended. So they ended up putting us into a joint task force. We were Joint Task Force Bravo. And there, next thing you know, there's 307 jumping in. You got C5s landing. You got the Special Forces groups coming in, and they're going out. And we got rules of engagement. We got live rounds, but we leave the point of our line of departure. You had to have tape across your weapon, tape across your ammunition, and all that stuff. And when you got back, they always did the round counts to make sure nobody popped off a round. But it was serious business.
What kind of unit were you in at
It was
Devon?
heavy engineer, Bravo 39th.
And there hadn't been a deployment since what, the early mid 70s to Vietnam up
Yeah.
until the time frame you're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we get down there, and that was so hush hush because of CIA operations and Oliver North. The whole 9 yards. That whole thing. It was pretty much spinning out of control, but we knew what our mission was. We built their first potable water tank, constructed it. It was actually from Cam Ranh Bay, Vietnam. The markings were on the package, and it was a 126,000 gallon water tank.
Wow.
I never built a water tank in my life. We were wearing out equipment, and as we would wear out sanders and grinders, trying to get this thing to where it would hold water and put the blivet and stuff inside it, as quick as we would wear stuff out, torque wrenches, all this, that we get brand new ones in the box. They just, here, don't even worry about servicing it. Just put it over here. Here's a new one. Cherry picker. We needed a cherry picker for, to get up high enough because this thing was pretty big. And we got a cherry picker. We didn't have one in our inventory, and our bucket loader couldn't get us high enough. So the 101st brings in a cherry picker for us. Like, you ask and they'll get it to you. Yeah.
Yeah,
crazy.
Yes. So y'all figured it out, but I imagine it had to feel bizarre the first few weeks.
Well, the day we landed, we flew out of Dover in a blinding snowstorm in January. It was January 25th of 1986. The reason I remember that, the same day, we basically flew over Florida, and then shortly after we flew over Florida is when the Challenger disaster occurred. Same day.
Wow.
I'm like, man, I told that story a bunch of times. That just was an eerie feeling because we couldn't understand when we got into country. Naturally, we were wore out. We've been up since pre-dawn, midnight the day before, and then getting shots and all that crap right before you get on the C5. Get on the C5 with your butt hurting because you got the gamma globulin shot in your butt, and you got to ride that knot for 5 hours. And then we land and we get settled into our GP Larges, and they say, hey, there's a little bar down here called the Recovery Room. They're always looking for business, and I'm like, a bar? What are you talking about? Well, they had permanent party folks there, and this retired sergeant major with a freaking green Amazon on his shoulder was serving drinks, and he had a TV with rabbit ears on it going in there and the generator running, and it showed the space shuttle disaster. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, that was crazy.
You would not have experienced a lot of what we just talked about, or any of what we just talked about, if you had gone to Virginia Tech.
No, probably not. It
So
would have been a total different paradigm. Yeah.
Besides Leonard Wood, Devens, and Schofield, where else were you stationed?
That's basically my stations, and then I ended up naturally when I PCS'd and then I ETS'd and came home. That's where I really started looking. I tried the civilian workforce for about a day, and I showed up super early to meet this surveying team, and they told me to meet them at 7, so I'm there at 6:30. And by 7:15, I was screw this. And the guy called me a little bit later. The project manager called me and, hey, where are you? And, well, I was there. Your team didn't show up. I don't have time for this. I believe if you tell me to be somewhere, if you're on time, you're late. That's just the way it was. Unbeknownst to me at the time, it was Bravo Company 229th's commander was this was his surveying company. His name is Scott Marsh.
Yep.
Scott Marsh, Secretary of the Army's son. And that's who I was meeting to go to work, and they didn't show up. And I said, y'all pack sand.
Little did you know he was going to be in the same National Guard unit you joined.
And him and I actually we were pretty good friends. It wasn't no harm. He said, hey, I get it. He understood it.
Well, so we were talking about there's something about the power of water. besides Leonard Wood, and actually you weren't too far from Lake of the Ozarks there. I mean, it's what, an hour and a half, 2 hour drive, maybe.
Lake of the Ozarks recreational area. Know it well.
Yes. So if you include Leonard Wood, obviously Schofield Barracks and Devens were near water. You were near water, and even Honduras, you weren't too far from water when you were down there.
Yeah, we did ops. We did ops out on the coast too, out on Black Sands and close to Belize. While we were there, we built a field landing strip and a timber trestle bridge, to bring their road structure up to snuff. And I mean, we're down there. There's water again. This big river coming right through where we were at, and we were putting this timber trestle across it. And I turned around, and here I was a team leader, and I'm looking around. And I'm like, where the hell's my team? Well, they're all up on the bank. I'm like, what are y'all doing? Get down here and get leeches all over us. Oh my God. You cutting leeches off with your knife, with your bayonet. And they said, you need to get out too. And they're pointing down the river. And I turn around over my shoulder. I look, and there's a freaking monster bushmaster.
What's a bushmaster?
A freaking nasty, venomous, if he bites you, just die.
Oh,
horrible.
God.
And big. He's parting the waters coming toward me. Well, all these guys, they're already out sitting up on the bank, can't even. I said, can you yell? Can you talk? Well, we're trying to. I'm down there steady pounding stuff into an abutment. But I came out of the water pretty quick.
Yeah, that I imagine that got your attention. I can't stand snakes. I really can't stand big snakes.
Yeah.
And if they're poisonous and big, whoo.
Oh. Yeah, they named a freaking rifle after that bad boy. He was a monster. Yeah, Bushmaster.
Yeah. My gosh, I've never encountered one, obviously, because I wasn't sure what one was. Yeah. All right, Don. So you got out after 4. Did you get out because you're like, hey, I committed to 4. I've done my thing. I'm going to move on, or?
Yeah, it was a collective decision. I think if I had been single, I would have stayed. I would have just stayed on active duty. I told my wife at the time, I said, I know it's tough. It's tough. I had no idea I was going to deploy to Honduras. And so she ended up coming home before I even ETS'd. But she came back home, and then we came back to Spotsylvania, made it our home. And I said, I got to find something to get back into boots, get back into the Army. My first interview was with Virgil Gray, and he was down at ITD as a training captain. Just got back from Ranger School, so he was full of it. And first question they asked me is, okay, when can you go to da 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 da? Because I showed up in dress B's with, all my adornments, and they're like, "What uniform? What Army did you come from?" I said, "This was an authorized uniform overseas," and I said, "I've got my Greens jacket in there if you'd rather me put that on." Well, yeah, we don't wear. Okay, cool. So I get back in there, and I got these monsters like Top Nelson, these mercenaries sitting around me talking about, when can you go to all these special schools and all that. So I go tomorrow, man. I'm hungry. I don't care what you put. Where I get a job, I'm ready to go. So ended up getting orders for 3rd Battalion 116th as their chemical NCO of all things. They had a vacancy for an AGR chem guy. Never stepped foot in the 3rd and 116th. Ended up a special assignment in Dove Street working for the Troop Command under Major Childers. Major Childers, who was getting ready to make Light Colonel. And he was Troop Command commander. And we had all the units under us on Troop Command that nobody knew what to do with under Light Infantry and Stark and all this other stuff. So they put them all under the umbrella of Troop Command to get them trained. And the 29th Band is naturally going to have to support the 29th Division. So they're going to have light training and learn how to fight as infantry. And having Childers there with his battle book, you pretty much knew that you were going to be in the field with them too. So. And I spent, got trained, got MOS qualified as a 50. That's where I got my 54 training, Echo and Charlie, and then transitioned to Bravo. And then Bravo Company comes open in Fredericksburg, and I jumped on it. And I said, that's where I want to be. And First person I met when I came back up there. Had met him during, my previous M-Day stint and my AT with Charlie Company. But it was Winston Ward. He was the first sergeant. And came in there and said, well, when you go to Sapper School? I said, I'll go to Sapper School as soon as I can get a quota, And, man, those guys, Heron and Smith and the guys that had already been Greer, who had already been through it. So like, oh, man, oh, my God, you know what the washout rate of that school is? You go out there and they're going to kick your ass. I'm throwing up, before I get on the freaking plane. Just knowing that I'll get out there, I can't not make it first time through Sapper School. I had to make it. And I tell people to this day, I'm still on the alumni with my Sapper buddies. And I tell them to this day, they say, young folks are like, hey, staff sergeants, C5s, corporals. They're like, what was the training regimen? What do you do? And I said, you put your ruck on and you get to the point where you forget you got it on your back. And people are going to think you're crazy, but everywhere you go, I don't care where you go, you're wearing your rucksack to the point to where you forget you have it on your back. And I said, and your feet, you got to take care of your feet. And I said, you do those things right there. And I said, you're still going to get injured. And I'm not telling you nothing. I mean, you made it through SFAS. It's just today, do 110%, tomorrow do 110%. And I was lucky. I went through a course with 36 folks. Most of them were fifth engineers out of Leonardwood. So most of them were fifth engineers, and we had 5 of us from the 229th that were there to go through with the fifth engineers. And we sent back 3 of us graduated. So it was me and Levinson and a guy out of Alpha Company at Carver out of Alpha Company. I couldn't stand that sucker.
Hopefully he won't listen to this, Don.
Yeah. Man, I think I told him I can't stand you because he stole the chicken.
So he already knows.
He stole one of our chickens.
Well, that's not right.
No.
At all.
Especially after you had me. Remember that story we had about being hungry?
Oh.
We were hungry.
So what year was it that you came to Bravo?
87.
87. And then before 91, you ended up being in HHC?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's when we met in 91 in HHC.
Yes, indeed.
And Don, I can't tell you how much I love the assault. Did we call them A&O back then?
A&O.
Yeah.
Assault and Obstacle Platoon, yep.
Yeah. I love those guys.
Yeah.
I loved them. And most junior officers couldn't stand them.
I know. And that's one reason I volunteered to be the PSG at a point. I said, I'm not a 62 November?
Yep.
Or 62. I wasn't a 62 November. I said, but I can learn. I can be a platoon sergeant in any freaking platoon, because I'm not doing the work. I'm leading it, I'm looking at, the guys like Atkins and Wheeler and, those subject matter experts that know what they're doing. And I had fun with them. I had a lot of fun, but that was kind of, because at first they were like, no, you're headquarters platoon sergeant. I said, headquarters platoon sergeant, that's not even a thing.
Yeah, that's not a thing.
Give me a platoon. I said, at least I can go to the field with them, during AT, and we can do good projects and stuff. And we did some crazy stuff, getting them guys out on the demo range to actually see, and go through it, and working with the SEALs down there. Oh my God. And then the handoff. Oh my God. I'll never forget when we did that project for him, and Chief Wagner, never forget that guy, brought us into the SEAL camp and gives me that crate, Cosmoline smelling. I'm like, what in the world is it? He said, well, you guys built us a freaking bunker and parked a D7G on it, and we can watch our shots now. So this is the least we can do. And he hands me this freaking case of black M9 bayonets. And he said, you won't see these anymore. These are black. You guys got green ones. These are black in a scabbard. And I said, oh my God, you talking about a morale booster.
Yeah.
I go back with them monsters. Yeah, I still had one. I presented it to a friend of mine at his retirement from Fairfax County because he's a reenactor, and I mean really into it. And he meant a lot to me. And I said, this really meant a lot to me when I got it. So I hope it means as much to you. And I gave that bayonet to him. But just assault and obstacle platoon. Yeah, the HHC I learned a whole heck of a lot. Just by all the MOSs. Good God, that was 144 folks versus 63 in a line company. Good God.
Yeah. I know you remember what I'm about to talk about, but it's I'd love to get your perspective on this. I'm sure I asked you at the time. Well, I probably didn't because it was literally my first drill. It's been long enough. I mean, it's been 30 plus years. My first drill, I'll just call him Lieutenant F, was showing me around, introducing me to some folks. And then we get to Sunday afternoon. It's final. It might have been the final formation it had to be for Sunday.
Yeah.
And you remember what I'm going to say?
Yeah.
I thought I was in like a bad movie.
Mm-hmm.
He was brought to the front of the formation in theory to receive a gift, much like you just described, where that platoon showed their appreciation, and it was not handed to the lieutenant.
Right.
And that corporal who had been busted, I think a total of 4 times in 5 years, who, by the way, I would go anywhere with that guy. He was awesome at his job.
Yeah.
You just had to meet him halfway, meet him where he needed to be met, and he was fine.
Yeah, that was a horrible time. Yeah.
But that was in front of the battalion commander. The XO was there. I'm like,
oh my God,
what is happening?
Yeah.
You've never seen anything like that, right?
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-mm.
And I'm like, what have I got myself into? This is my first assignment, really? Yeah. All right. So Don, a couple more things before we close out. One is I ask a question that's meant to be a little more revealing about who you are as a person beyond what we've already talked about. But it's it's kind of a softball question. Imagine you have your own talk show, but you only are going to do it one time. You get to invite your own guest, one male guest, a female guest, a musical act, and if you're into comedy, a comedian. The show can be thought-provoking, it can be educational, it can be pure fun, it can be a mix of whatever makes you happy. Your guest can be alive or dead. They can be famous, close family member, whatever you want it to be. Who are your 3 or 4 guests?
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Well, now definitely I bring some folks back in. My dad definitely. He kind of fit most of those bills. Funny, stern. But again, I lost him, and I'm looking at the folks that I've lost, and my daughter at the young age of 25, because she had a lot of insight. She had a lot of things she wanted to do, and then a few others military wise. Just like I spent time out the other day with Roger and a couple of those folks, and that he's a guy that's always thick and thin, man. He went to bat for me more times than I actually realized, because I believed in him, and got him through one of the hardest courses in his life, and it was a career changing course for him, his advanced course. And I can actually say the time I spent I can name them. My dad always told me, you name your close ones on 5 fingers. Your close friends, you got 5. You're definitely in that mix, because it's always been, you were 110%, straight up. This is what you get. This is face value, and I appreciate that out of people. I'm not putting on a show for anybody.
Yeah.
This is the folks I want, to my right and my left. And yeah, I think if you're writing a book or doing a movie, it would be a bestseller.
All
Because
right.
I've always said this: if I ever do write a book, it's just going to be called Life. Um, doing life, and just start from something similar like we're talking about. You were born here all the way up through, and those trials and tribulations, and what those special people, really do mean to you, and how they changed you. I'll never forget when you came back from SFAS, and you told me your story, and I'm like, what are you talking about? What the hell are you talking about? And that they could actually do what they do, and to this day they still do it.
Yeah.
I think Dan Neffendorf recently, I think his son, his older son, made it through.
Yeah.
Made it through Q course,
Which is awesome.
But again, it's what, a percentage they get to do that. And having those close folks, because there's a trust thing there too. There's a trust thing. You got to really, if you breach somebody's trust, that's hard to. You can forgive, but you never forget it. And I just think those folks that were honest and all, I'll never forget asking you a question one time about your dad, and you didn't like to talk a lot about your dad, but we knew he was a very a very well liked, very well respected general officer, and because I had that time where he had to come up and ask us some hard questions, and we got through that. But I'm like, what do you say? The only thing you can say, tell the truth.
Yep.
Tell the truth when somebody asks you a question. Tell them the truth, and I tell my kids and my grandkids now, if you get to that crossroads, either right or left, just do right, do the right thing, and I think we did that. I think we had some pretty good teams, pretty good times. Worked hard, trained hard, but yeah, having those folks around me. Lost my mom too. Lost my mom a couple years ago. COVID got her. That was a rough time for me. But I definitely like to have our folks back that have went on before us.
No, that's. I wish I could grant you a show like that and get you to see your parents and your daughter again.
Yes, indeed.
Don, we were talking before we started recording. I asked you if anything was off limits, and I kind of had a very loose understanding of what had happened with your daughter. Do you mind telling us again?
What
happened?
She struggled for years with chronic pain that we kind of put off. That you're just growing up. You're just going through your physiological changes in your body, and you're an athlete, you're going to hurt. You're a gymnast, you're going to hurt. You're a cheerleader, competitive cheer, straight A's, B's, and then 14 years old, adolescence, and her life starts to change. She starts to lose friends. One year she lost a bunch of friends before her freshman year, and just a tremendous tragedy for a kid to go through. And we were trying to get our church to assist with counseling and things like that, but it just, what are you going to say? What are you going to say to kids that are hanging themselves, and kids that are, car accidents that just don't take one, they take five, just best friends. And then her decision to not go with that group, her best friend that night, and then her best friend ended up getting killed. So this pain, over the years, and not only mental anguish and things like that, and then the physical pain she just never could understand. Car wreck, she gets treated, then finds out, they put her on opioids, and then they find out that she's got a gallbladder issue. I got to take the gallbladder out, put them on opioids, so to the point to where, she starts weaning off of the opioids, and then finds out she has malformation, Chiari malformation of the brain at between a 1 and a 2 level. There's 4 levels of it, to a point where it can be fatal. But it's a pretty serious thing that can be surgically repaired. But even with surgery, it's only a 50-50 chance that most folks make it through it and make a completely normal life. But the pain from that particular malformation, Chiari malformation, Chiari, named after a Dr. Arnold Chiari who found out about it. Your cerebral tonsil swells to a point to where your brain is trying to come out of its skull, and I can only imagine the cerebral fluid trying to pass through those channels in your spine and your brain and your neck, and then the pain associated with that. So opioids. So she gets to the point where, okay, the doctors are like, well, we got to stop the opioids because that's causing a problem. And she had experienced drug use when she couldn't get the opioids. Naturally, you got to find something to kill the pain. And unbeknownst to us, I mean, we didn't realize how bad it was until she was trying to come home to the kids. And it's Veterans Day, 11/11/13, and I talked to her via text for the last time, and she'd been incarcerated for a while. And I talked to her, and she said, "Hey, I'm doing okay. Happy Veterans Day, and hope to see you guys soon." I said, "Oh my God, we love you. We're here having dinner for Veterans Day with your boys, and we hope to see you too. We love you." And the next 12 hours we can't account for. She got picked up by friends once she got out of incarceration, and they decided to give her a injection. They gave her a hot shot, and we know they gave it to her because it was given to her in her arm. She was bruised. It was her opposite arm where she had problems before. She was held down and basically given a hot shot, and because she'd been clean and had rehabbed while she was incarcerated, her doctor had even given her a clean bill of health that day that she got out. And that evening is when it all happened, some wee hours of the morning. And she had a large quantities of opioid and heroin in her system when they finished the autopsy. And that's ultimately what she died from. But we tried to push Orange County to keep an investigation open, and there's a big investigation about bigger fish and this, that, and the other. I said, well, I'll tell you right now, you better find them because I'm going to bring the wrath. Yeah, it was really hard for us. I mean, my wife and I at the time, we were trying to quit smoking. We ultimately did after years and years, but I haven't had a drink in 18 years.
Wow.
I stopped drinking when my grandson was born, and made a commitment there that it's time to stop. There's more to life than that lifestyle. But that day, 11/12/13, when I got the phone call at 5 a.m. from a brother-in-law, said, "Hey, you got to get down to Lake of the Woods. It's about your daughter, and we think she's passed." And I'm like, "Oh my God!" So here I have to wake the family up, and we got to keep the normalcy for the boys. And we sent them to school. Heck, we'll tell them later. We got to figure this out ourselves before we get the kids involved. And they went to school, normal day. And when they got off the bus, they get off the bus, and here's the house. It's got hundreds of people here, and it's just a long day to have to endure, the questions. And we just didn't know the answers. Medical examiners, they wanted to take her body to science, and these questions on the same day that your daughter's passed, and it's just hard to answer those questions. Luckily, medical examiner in Manassas, friend of mine, I just out of the blue opened my phone up and called her. I said, "Hey, my daughter's coming to you. Please take care of her." And she gave me more faith at that point, and we had a lot of faith. Faith really got us through a lot. We really laid on it heavy. But Nancy Bull, PhD, Office of Office of Chief Medical Examiner in Manassas. There, she assured me that she would be taken care of with kid gloves, and that she was very sorry for the loss. But over the course of the next bunch of years, a lot of people in that same group have, we couldn't do anything legally. There was just always an open investigation. They just wanted to come back and say it was this, it was an overdose. Well, there's always more, more sides to the story. But again, going through redactions and trying to get, copies of transcripts through the county attorney and all, it's just one roadblock after the next. And then we talked to the boys about it a lot. We were very open with them and have always been transparent. And we told them, growing up, that we will never lie to you. We will always tell you the straight facts, and you learn and become good citizens by knowing that, if you make good decisions, you make, and I mean, we're struggling through it now. My oldest grandson's having a rough time, but he's making it. It's just, he learned a lot from that, but he asked about his mom the other night, and very tearfully, and he hasn't broken down like that in years. So thank God we had the boys in counseling early on, and counseling up through the years, but we wanted to continue that, and now they're getting ready to age out of adolescence and become adults. I mean, once they're 18, shoot, we ain't got no say so over their medical stuff when they're 15, much less when they're 18. Everything changes. So, but do the best you can do. I mean, if there's any advice I can give to anybody, you do what you can do every day, and do it to your best ability. And you can't beat yourself up. That's where a lot of marriages end with death, is the what ifs. The what ifs will drive you out of your mind. What if I could have done this? What if I could have done this? You've got to stop.
Yeah.
Because we're all in one shape or the other, shape or form, we're all either one of two things, and that's we're in denial or we're in recovery from something. And I've come to that realization over the years that you just got to deal with it, and whole nother chapter, but I'll do another podcast with you when it comes down to talking about health and things like that, post military, because I got another book on that one too. I got a lot of titanium in my body. And probably going to have a lot more, but this has been good.
Well, Don, your daughter had two sons when she passed.
Yep.
And they were elementary school age, if I'm doing the math.
4 and 5.
Pre-elementary for
4. I think Chunk was getting ready to go into preschool. They're 22 months apart. 22 months apart. I think Chunk must have been, Chunk was probably 5. Dominic was getting ready to turn 7. At the time. But they went to school, and that night they came home. We talked to them and told them what happened, and they said, well, we thought there was a party. Naturally, you got all these cars in the driveway, food everywhere, people sitting around. And I said, well, it's not a party. And we told them, your mommy died this morning. She passed away unexpectedly. And then, out of these little ones, they look at you and they're like, you got a little tear here and there, and they're very upset. And then, well, what are we going to do now? And I'm like, well, what do you want to do? Well, we got wrestling practice. These are 4 and 5, almost 6-year-old. They're like, you want to go to wrestling practice? I'll never forget it. Virgil and Becky had pulled in out front, and they were coming in the door. And I said, hey, I'll have to talk to you guys later. Lisa's in the house. Thank you for coming. But I got to get these boys to wrestling practice. They were in a private wrestling club. Taking a wrestling practice, and I sat there the whole time of wrestling practice, just bawling, sitting out in the hallway of the school that they go to high school at now, and sat out there just trying to, what in the world is going on? Next few days were kind of tough.
Yeah, I imagine you don't remember some of that just because
it was the business piece of it. Oh my God, that's the part I had to deal with I had to let Lisa grieve. She had to grieve. I said, I'll be able to do that part too, but I'm not the business side of death. Oh my gosh, man. I mean, it is unbelievable the things that were thrown up. I mean, and we planned. I mean, we had we had plots, and we had life insurance, and we had everything, but you get somebody there's an investigation going on, and guess what? They're not gonna let up off the funds of your life insurance until the investigation's complete, until there's a death certificate. 7 months we waited
Wow.
for a death certificate. That was excruciating.
Oh, I bet. Mm. Well, tell me about the grandsons these days, and tell me about your wife, and we'll close out with that.
Okay, wife, she's a hero. She's a superhero. She keeps these boys, and it's a full-time job. Since I've been in emergency management, she stepped down from her career, but she's worked all of her adult life. But she stay at home and keeps the fire burning, allows me to do my career stuff. Then, like, going in my third career now, but yeah, she's a saint. Um, I couldn't, no way I could endure what I've endured without the love and the faith we have together. We've had a strong bond. But she gets it. I mean, she's experienced tremendous loss naturally with our daughter, but also with brothers and nieces, and you just name it. It's tremendous loss. Loss of her dad was really tough on her, tough on my son. But yeah, now here son's doing well as he can. He's 38, and he works for an electrician or a plumber full time, David Light Plumbing. And he's making his way, and he's got a young son, 5 years old, and also another son that's 16, and they're kind of they don't see each other because of previous relationships, and that's hard on him. But this little Asher, he's 5 years old. He comes out here and he stays sometimes weeks with us, and it gives us back that perspective about what it's all about, But yeah, watching the other boys, Dominic and Christopher, grow up and find their way. And again, like we said, whatever it is that you choose, we will support you. We will support you, and we will give you 110%, because they deserve that shot. They deserve that shot at life. No mom, no dads. It's been tough. And then when the father figure does come back in the picture, it's normally very, very close time frame, because they're going to reoffend. Recidivism for jail, and he's a career freaking crook. Recidivism, I explained to the little boys, it's a 77.9% recidivism rate for first time offenders. They're going to go back to jail over whatever, because they just can't steer right. And then that messes up his mind, my grandson's mind, for another 6 months, and we try to get him out of that. But now he's becoming a man. He's got a girlfriend, and he takes care of his girlfriend, and we're actually a little closer now because we got a little bit of space. But he's going to make it. He's going to be okay. And Chunk's definitely going to be okay. I think he's going to end up in. He wanted to be an Oregon Duck originally, and then now I think he's got his head set on hopefully a college with either lacrosse or football. But again, that's tough getting in. He's a tough kid. I mean, his work ethic is phenomenal. Tough.
Well, Don, I probably never told you this. I truly appreciate your service to our country. I know the good citizens that you've served in emergency management appreciate what you've done for them. And God is not going to put on your shoulders shit you can't handle.
That's right.
And you've been through a really, really set of rough patches, but I think you're in a good place now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and thank you too. I know you served a long time, served hard, a lot of hard tours, but yeah, my hat's off to you. And again, I mean, you're one of those 5, man. When you reached out to me about this, I said, that's why I say, whatever it takes, There's a slogan.
Yeah. Said it
Good
all
Lord.
the time.
Yeah, I keep seeing Tim White. I still see him in pictures down at Fort Pickett. Good Lord.
Yeah.
He's down there as a civilian, I think. But no, selfless service. I mean, service to your country, and truly, truly serving your neighbor, serving your fellow man. It's a huge responsibility, but it's worth every minute of it.
I know your grandsons wish their mom was still around. I'm sure they wish that their father was still around.
Yeah.
But they won the grandpa lottery, and you're effectively dad.
Yeah,
They won the dad lottery, as odd as that may sound.
That's exactly right.
And I don't know. I haven't seen Lisa. I haven't seen your wife since 2002 probably. But
Yeah.
I think they won the lottery on that front too.
Yes, indeed.
Cool, man. Well, yeah, we need to connect after this so you can tell me
Let's do
about
that.
titanium in your body. I know you've had a couple of you have 2 titanium hips.
Yeah. And now I'm going through some stuff with my knee. I've had 2 cancer surgeries, one on my back, one on my nose. They had to reconstruct some stuff up there. I had all kinds of crap going on with my nose. But yeah, my hips and oh my Lord, I fought the fight there. I had no idea that's what it was. Virgil looked at me one day. He said, Don, he says, I'm 70% disabled and I go to the gym 5 days a week. You're 10% off of active duty and you can't even get in my truck. He said, something's wrong with that. And now he's advocating. I mean, he's working for Veteran Service Organization. His I think it's his brother-in-law out in Oklahoma. Huge Veteran Service Organization, nonprofit, and helping people. He told me the other day, last time I talked to him, wasn't the other day, it was probably 2 months ago. He's been traveling since he retired, but he told me, he says, yeah, man, we're going to continue to document and continue to get you into the system. And that's why I'm a firm believer in the VA. The VA saved my life. You won't hear that a lot, but if it wasn't for closing that medical record from the Army and then going to part 2 with the VA, it might take them a while, but they figure it out and you get the right people. You just got to know who to talk to. Like right now I have a Virginia rep, Virginia disabled veterans, VDFS or whatever it is. But, you get an appointment with them, you tell them what's going on, and you got the documentation. Like right now, my knee is the next thing. I had surgery on that at Sapper School after I graduated, and they sent me home and follow up. But now they're looking back in my records and they're finding stuff from like 2003 that's documented. So it's just exacerbation from years and years of pounding. But I'm just trying to walk and just stay walking the rest of my life. I was actually in a chair. I was done. I was so bent over and my gait was so far off. I was full-time cane, walker. Here at the house, I was in a hover round out doing chores out in the freaking yard. I just couldn't walk. And then when they told me one day down at the VA, this young doctor comes up and says, hey, when you're done with that rehab medicine over there, why don't you come over to ortho and I'll fix you. I looked at this kid and I'm like, what are you, 12? Like Doogie Howser, He says, no, I'm the lead surgeon and I know what's wrong with you. He said, give me 20 minutes and do some films. I said, hey man, I got my bag in the car. You fix me. I'm yours. I said, I'll go upstairs, do whatever you want. And went upstairs, did the x-rays, came back down. He flops them up on the thing. He says, you got the hips of a 70-year-old dude and you're 46.
Wow.
46. And they didn't want to do the surgery naturally because I wasn't 50. And I said, no, put zippers in, man. Let's get this going. If they're that bad, I want them out of there. And then 6 months later, had my left one done. 6 months after, that's 2010, 2011, respectively. And Easter of the following year, I had my second one done. And I didn't even miss work. I mean, working from my laptop and my chair, my custom chair, sitting there like this, pounding it out. Virgil being my boss. Your phone rings, answer it. You get an email, answer it. He said, recover. So just phenomenal.
And you're physically able to walk as normally as you would expect, right?
Yeah. Walking good. I was trying to get into a really good walking regimen. I was up to about 6-7 miles a week, and then this damn knee starts. But I think my knee, it's more my feet than it is my knee, because I'm experiencing different things in different shoes. But I start physical therapy for that on July 5th, and that's all, veterans approved. So yeah, it's been crazy.
Well, Don, when I think about people that have to live with chronic pain as they get older, I'm thinking of athletes and soldiers, and the athletes got paid a bunch of money to make it to that high level to play into their mid-30s, and guys like you end up. You served your country, and it's certainly an honorable path, and I wish you no pain.
Yes, sir. Same to you.
Yeah, no pain in a way that it's a good no pain, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
Cool, Don. It was great catching up. I'm going to.
Oh my God, yeah, this has been great.
I'm going to stop the recording, but hang on for a second.
Okay.
Thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd also really appreciate if you'd rate and review us. You can find us at scodupodcast.com.